Next thing we'll see the DMVPN phase 1. So we'll go phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3 like that. Phase 1 tunnel configuration we'll see. So in the previous already we have seen the basic example of the tunnel configuration. This is going to be the same. So here we are trying to do phase 1. Now phase 1 means, always remember, on the hub we'll be using multi-point GRE and on the spokes we'll be using normal GRE. So GRE means it's a point-to-point connection. So in terms of configuration, if I'm using tunnel source command, tunnel source tells from where the tunnel starts. Either you can define the interface or you can define the IP address if it is a static IP. So of course you always need to have a static IP on the hub, whereas you can still have a dynamic IP on the spokes here. So if I'm using tunnel mode command instead of tunnel destination, you need to understand I'm using multi-point GRE. And if I'm using tunnel destination command, so I'm saying tunnel starts from here and it ends on router 1. So if I'm using tunnel destination command, so this is the public IP of the router 1 from router 2 to router 1. This means we are using GRE. So in terms of configuration, whenever you see the configuration of tunnel destination command configured on the spokes, you need to understand it's a point-to-point tunnel. So from spoke to hub it is point-to-point, but whereas from hub to spoke it is multi-point, because we have a separate point-to-point point-to-multi-point tunnel here, whereas on the spokes it is separate point-to-point connection. And then we can give any IP. Of course, I'm using 10.subnet here, so 10.000/24 subnet, and I'm using 1 here, 2 here, 3 and 4 as per my topology. So the first thing, you need to assign the IP address and then configure the GRE or multi-point GRE depending upon which phase you are implementing. And the next command we discussed that this IP NHRP network ID, we need to enable the NHRP on that particular tunnel interface. The network ID no need to match, it is a locally significant value. So I can use some other number here. So this up to here the configuration remains the same. Now the next thing, we'll be using this command. I'll come back in the next, probably I'll be talking more on this when we implement a routing over the DMVPN tunnels. Even this command as well. So also this one. So that's it. We are done with the configuration on the hub router in terms of tunnel configuration. Whereas on the spokes we need to add additional 2 commands. We need to tell who is your next hop server, because the spokes has to send out the NHRP register messages in order to register themselves with the hub. So they should provide what is the tunnel IP address and what is the public IP used by them. So basically registration messages, we have seen that messages already. So we are saying my next hop server is 10.001, that is router 1, and to reach that 10.001 the public IP is 15.001, and that's what I'm defining here. So these are the 2 additional commands we need to configure on the spokes, where the first command tells who is your next hop server and the next command tells what is your public IP to reach that particular next hop. We need to map compulsory. If you don't tell, then there is no way the spokes can register themselves with the hub. So this is a kind of minimum configuration you have to do. So let's go ahead and try to configure the same thing here. So before I go ahead, I just want to ensure that we do have reachability between the public IPs used on each site. Like we have already seen this in the basic setup. So we do have reachability. So I'm trying to configure the tunnel with an IP address, let's say 192.168, not 192. I decided to use 10.network. And then we have to say tunnel source. So the source is S2/0 and tunnel mode GRE multipoint. So on the hub router we'll be using a multipoint and then enable the NHRP. Okay, so this is what I'm doing. So if I just try to see the configurations here, this is what I'm doing. So if I go to router 2, On the router 2, I just need to change the IP address. NHRP, I can just keep it same or different, doesn't matter. But whereas here, if you remember I discussed, we need to say tunnel destination. The destination is going to be the IP address of the router 1. Because in the phase 1, we will be using GRE on the spokes, whereas multi-point GRE on the router 1. So additionally, we have to add some other commands like IP NHRP next hop server. The next hop server is 10.0.0.1, and we have to say to reach the next hop server, what is the public IP, right? So this is a configuration you have to add on the router 2. So let's go to router 2 and quickly copy paste these commands. Similar way on the router 3, I'm just trying to change the IP address. Rest of the configurations are still the same because I'm using the same interfaces on the router 3 as well. So let's move on to the router 3 and done on the router 3 as well. And on the router 4, we need to change the IP, and I can keep the remaining configs exactly the same. Router 4. So in terms of verification, I'll start with the router 1. So first we'll verify that the tunnel interface should be up, and from the router 1 I should be able to ping to the router 2 tunnel IP address 3 and 4. So that confirms that the tunnel configuration is tunnel have reachability. We do have reachability between the router 1 to the other spoke tunnels. So let's try to do the same thing from the router 2 as well to just confirm that I do have reachability here. So you can see we do have reachability from all the tunnels. You can see from the router 2 I'm still able to reach router 3 and 4 as well. So additionally, if you want to check, you can use show IP NHRP detail, these commands, to see the tunnel configurations. These are dynamic tunnels established from 2 to 3 because of the register messages. So we do have, or you can use show DMVPN to see the point-to-point multi-point tunnel establishment. It is with router 234, and these are dynamically built. And if you go and check on the router 2, if I say show DMVPN, you see there is only one tunnel. Because basically here we are using GRE, so there is no way you can establish a tunnel between spoke to spoke. There is only point to point. It's just a point to point. So if you try to trace, you can see I'm able to reach from here, but again it's only via router 1. Okay, so done. So this is how we are configuring the DMVPN phase 1 tunnel here.